Let's get brutally honest about something most people completely misread. There's a stage in the avoidant dynamic that almost nobody talks about. And it's the stage that causes the most confusion, the most pain, and honestly, the most unnecessary heartbreak. Because at this stage, what's actually happening inside the avoidant is the opposite of what their behavior is telling you. At this stage, they have quietly, privately decided that you matter, that you are different from everyone else, that somewhere in that locked-off emotional world of theirs, you have gotten in. And here's the brutal irony of that. When an avoidant decides you are the one, that's actually when things get harder. Not easier, harder, more confusing, more distant, more hot and cold, more of everything that makes you feel like you're losing your mind. Most people hit this stage and think they're losing them. They think the pulling back means it's over. They think the silence means indifference. They think the emotional shutdown means they never really cared. And so they start chasing, or they start backing away in hurt. Or they start doing whatever they can to get back to the warmth they felt earlier. The warmth that was so real, so undeniable, right before everything got complicated. But here's what I need you to understand today. That warmth was real. And the pulling back, that's not the end of the story. That's actually the part where it gets psychologically interesting. That's the part most people never understand. And not understanding it has cost a lot of people a lot of unnecessary pain. So stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through changes everything about how you see what's happening. The warmth that came before all this. Before we go any further, I want to acknowledge something, because I think you need to hear it acknowledged. The early version of this, whatever it was, felt real. Maybe it felt more real than anything you've experienced in a long time. There was something in it, a quality of attention, a quality of presence, a way they looked at you or talked to you or showed up that made you feel genuinely seen. And that's not your imagination. That's not you projecting. That wasn't you being naive or desperate or reading things wrong. It was real. Avoidance in the early stages, before the fear kicks in, before the proximity starts to trigger the old wounds, can be some of the most present, most attuned, most compelling people you'll ever encounter. Because they're not defending yet. Because the stakes don't feel high yet. Because they can let themselves enjoy connection when it doesn't yet feel like a threat. And so you got the version of them that exists before the walls go up. And it was good. And you held on to that goodness as evidence of what this could be. And you weren't wrong to hold on to it. That goodness was real. The problem is that goodness is not a promise. It's not a preview of what you'll always have access to. It's a glimpse of what they're capable of when they're not afraid. And the tragedy of avoidant attachment is that the closer things get, the less of that version you see. Because fear doesn't coexist with openness. Not for them. Not yet. So if you've been wondering whether you imagined it, you didn't. And if you've been wondering why it went away, it's not because they decided you weren't worth it. It's because they decided you were. And now we need to talk about what that actually means. Why getting close feels like danger to an avoidant. Before we get to what this stage looks like, you need to understand something foundational about the way avoidants are wired. For most people, when you realize you're falling for someone, when you realize this person actually matters, it feels like relief. It feels like arrival. Like something you've been looking for has finally shown up. For an avoidant, it feels like a threat. Not consciously, not in a way they could sit down and explain to you. But deep in the nervous system, in the part of the brain that learned its first lessons about love before they had words for any of it, closeness equals danger. Intimacy equals loss of self. Needing someone equals being at their mercy. And the stronger the feeling, the stronger the threat response. So when an avoidant starts to feel that pull toward you, when you become the person they think about, the person whose opinion matters, the person they can actually imagine building something with, the alarm goes off inside them. And their system does what it was trained to do decades before you ever met them. It creates distance, not because they don't care, because they care too much for their system to handle it without protection. The wall doesn't go up when things are casual. The wall goes up when things start to feel real, when the stakes actually mean something. Let that sit for a second. The more they pull back, the more they might actually be feeling. That is the fundamental cruel reality of avoidant attachment, and it's why this stage is so easy to misread. What this stage actually looks like. Let me paint a picture that might feel uncomfortably familiar. Things start well. Maybe things start really well. There's warmth. There's genuine connection. They show up. They reach out. They say things that feel like they mean something. You start to think, This might actually be real, and then something shifts. It's subtle at first, a slightly slower response, a bit more distance, a moment where you expected warmth and got nothing. And then another, and slowly, without any clear conversation or explanation, you start to feel the temperature dropping. You try to bring back the warmth, you reach out more, you initiate more, you put in effort to recreate those early moments, and nothing quite lands the way it used to. They're still there, but not fully. Present, but not present. Available, but not available. And the more you reach, the further away they seem. Now here's what most people do at this point. They assume they did something wrong. They start reviewing every interaction, looking for the moment things changed. They start managing themselves more carefully, saying less, meeting less, shrinking to take up less space, hoping that if they just get small enough, safe enough, undemanding enough, they can get back to the version of this person who made them feel wanted. And that's where the real damage happens. Not just to the relationship, to you, because you were not doing something wrong. You were experiencing someone whose inner alarm system was going off, not because of you, but because of what you were starting to mean to them. The quiet decision they made, somewhere in the middle of all of that confusion, somewhere in the pulling back and the hot and cold and the moments of warmth followed by silence, they made a decision. Not out loud, not to you, not even, possibly, consciously to themselves. But a decision was made, and the decision was something like, this person is different, this person matters, this person is the kind of person I don't want to lose. And instead of that decision resulting in more closeness, instead of it making them move toward you, it made them more careful, more guarded, more deliberate about protecting themselves from what would happen if they let you fully in and then lost you. Because here's the thing about avoidance that most people don't understand. The fear isn't that they don't care. The fear is that they do. The fear is that if they let themselves want this fully, need this fully, be in this fully, and then it falls apart, they won't be okay. And so the protective mechanism kicks in. And the protective mechanism says, don't go all in. Keep a part of yourself back. Stay in control of the emotional risk. And from the outside, that looks like indifference. It looks like they've lost interest. It looks like they don't care whether you stay or go. But underneath it, there's something quietly decided, quietly held, quietly real. The tragedy is that the very thing they're doing to protect the feeling is the thing most likely to destroy it. Because you can only wait for so long on the other side of someone's walls before you start to wonder if there's anything worth waiting for. And that's the part they don't see until it's too late. Why? Most people misread this stage. Let me be direct about this. The reason most people misread this stage is because we've been taught, by every movie, every love song, every story about how it's supposed to go, that when someone decides you matter, they show you. They show up more, they say it, they reach for you, they make you feel it. And so when the opposite happens, when the person who seemed to be falling for you suddenly goes cold and confusing, the only logical conclusion feels like they changed their mind. They decided I'm not enough. They pulled back because they want out. And so you either chase or you leave. Both of which confirm the avoidant's deepest fear that closeness ends in abandonment, and both of which often end the connection before it ever had a chance to become what it could have been. Here's what nobody tells you. The avoidant pulling back right when things get real is not a reflection of your worth. It is not a statement about your value. It is not a judgment on whether you are lovable or wanted or enough. It is a trauma response. It is a nervous system doing what it was trained to do long before you arrived. It is the predictable, almost mechanical output of an attachment style that was formed in conditions you had nothing to do with and were never responsible for fixing. And knowing that doesn't make it hurt less. I know, but it changes what the hurt means. It means you're not failing, you're not losing, you're just standing on the other side of someone's fear, which is a very different thing. The push-pull and what it's actually doing to you, I want to slow down here and talk about the effect this stage has on the person on the receiving end of it. Because we spend so much time analyzing the avoidance psychology that we forget to look at what this dynamic is actually doing to you. And it's doing something significant. When you're in the push-pull, when someone is warm and then cold, present and then gone, close and then distant, your nervous system doesn't just observe that neutrally. It starts to work overtime. It starts to scan constantly. Every message, every tone, every pause, every interaction gets analyzed for signs of where you stand. Are we good? Did something shift? Are they pulling back? Is this the end? Was that moment real? You become hypervigilant to them, attuned to tiny signals most people wouldn't even notice. And this hypervigilance, this constant low-level monitoring of their emotional state, is exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. It's exhausting because it's full-time. There's no off switch. Even when you're not with them, some part of your brain is running the analysis. Even when you're doing something completely unrelated, there's a background process running that says, where do things stand? What does the silence mean? Are they thinking about me? And what does that kind of constant vigilance do to a person? It disconnects you from yourself. Because all that bandwidth, all that attention that should be going toward your own life, your own needs, your own sense of direction, is being spent on decoding someone who wasn't designed to be decoded. Someone whose signals are genuinely contradictory, not because they're trying to confuse you, but because they're genuinely confused themselves about what they want versus what they can allow themselves to have. And the longer this goes on, the more you start to lose the plot of your own life. The more their state becomes the weather you're always tracking. The more their emotional availability becomes the thing you're organized around. And here's the thing I need you to sit with. You deserve to be someone's priority. Not their anxiety, not the thing they want but are afraid of, not the person they've decided matters but can't figure out how to be present for. You deserve to be with someone whose love for you shows up in a way you can actually receive. Not just internally decided, actually expressed. What you actually do with this. Now I need you to hear this next part very carefully, because this is where a lot of people go wrong. Understanding that an avoidant has quietly decided you matter, understanding that the pullback is fear, not indifference, does not mean you wait indefinitely. It does not mean you shrink yourself more. It does not mean you manage yourself into invisibility in hopes that one day they'll feel safe enough to reach for you the way you deserve. Understanding their psychology is not a reason to endure behavior that doesn't work for you. Let that land. Knowing why someone is the way they are is compassion. Staying in something that is consistently hurting you because you understand the why. That's not compassion. That's self-abandonment dressed up as love. The question you actually need to be asking right now is not, do they care? The question is what they can currently give enough for you? Not theoretically, not eventually. Right now, in the day-to-day lived reality of this, is it enough? Because here's the truth about this stage. Some avoidants do the work. Some of them, when faced with the real possibility of losing someone they've quietly decided matters, make a different choice. They push through the fear, they get into therapy, they start understanding their own patterns. And over time, real time, uncomfortable time, they become capable of the closeness they've been avoiding. But that growth doesn't happen because you waited. It doesn't happen because you managed yourself perfectly enough to not trigger their alarm. It happens because they choose it, independently, because something in them decides the cost of staying defended is too high. And until that happens, if it happens, you are not required to put your life on hold. You are not required to make yourself smaller. You are not required to orbit someone at a safe enough distance that they never have to confront their own fear. You are allowed to need more than this, and you are allowed to say so. How to navigate this without losing yourself. So where does that leave you right now? What do you actually do with all of this? Because understanding the psychology is one thing, living inside it is another. And I want to give you something practical to hold on to. Not a script, not a strategy to make them come closer. Something more foundational than that. The first thing is this. Stop performing the version of yourself you think will make them feel safe. Stop managing your needs, your energy, your emotions to match their comfort level. Not because you should be reckless with how you show up, but because the version of yourself you've been presenting in this, the smaller, quieter, more careful version, is not actually serving you or them. An avoidant who needs you to be consistently non-threatening in order to stay close is an avoidant who hasn't done the work yet. And shrinking yourself doesn't help them do the work. It just teaches them that the cost of being avoidant is low, that they can have connection on their terms, at their pace, with no real accountability for the effect their patterns have on someone else. That's not love. That's a comfortable arrangement that benefits mostly them. The second thing is this. Get clear on what you actually need, not what you think is reasonable to ask for given who they are, not what you've decided to settle for because the good moments are so good, what you actually need in a relationship to feel secure, valued, and present. Write it down if you have to. Be honest with yourself about whether that's something you're consistently getting in this. Because you can understand someone completely, You can have full compassion for their attachment wounds and their fear and their limitations, and still decide that what they can offer isn't enough for you. Those two things can both be true at the same time. Compassion and clarity, understanding and boundaries, knowing why they are the way they are and still choosing yourself. And the third thing, and this one matters more than the other two, reconnect with your own life, your own interests, your own friendships, your own sense of direction and purpose. Because when someone becomes the main weather system you're tracking, you stop building your own. And you need to be building your own. Not as a manipulation tactic to make them more interested, as a genuine act of self-preservation. As a way of remembering that you're a whole person whose life has meaning and momentum that has nothing to do with whether they decide to let their walls down. Your life is not on hold pending their growth. It is happening now, and it deserves your full attention. The part nobody says out loud. I want to say something that most people in this space don't say, because it's uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the person who has quietly decided you are the one is not going to tell you, ever. They're going to carry that quiet decision inside of them and never translate it into anything that looks like what you actually need. They're going to let the fear win. They're going to keep the walls up, and they're going to let you walk away rather than risk the vulnerability of saying, I don't want to lose you, and you will leave. And they will grieve. And they will spend years thinking about what could have been, and they will still not fully understand why they couldn't cross the distance. That is the avoidant story that doesn't have a redemption arc, and it's the one nobody wants to tell you about, because it's hard. But you deserve to know it's possible, so that you don't spend years of your own life waiting for a translation that never comes. Because here's what I know about you. You are someone who felt something real, who wanted something real, who kept showing up even when it was confusing and painful, because the connection felt worth it. And that willingness to stay, to try, to love through uncertainty, that is not weakness, that is not desperation. That is a deep and genuine capacity for love that you deserve to invest somewhere it can actually reach you. The avoidant may have decided you are the one, but only you get to decide what that means for how you spend your heart. The signs you're actually in this stage. I want to get specific for a second, because some of you listening right now might be wondering, am I actually in this stage? Is this what's happening? Let me give you some of the most common signs. The first one is this: the warmth comes in flashes. There are moments, real, undeniable moments, where everything feels right, where they're open, present, even tender. And those moments are followed by distance that makes no logical sense. No fight, no obvious trigger, just a temperature drop. And when you try to get back to the warmth, it's like reaching for something that's moved just out of range. The second sign is that they show interest in your life but resist real intimacy. They want to know how your day was. They'll engage in conversation, they might even be physically present with you. But the moment things go deeper, the moment you get vulnerable, or the moment you ask for something emotionally real, they deflect. They change the subject. They make a joke. They suddenly remember something they have to do. The third sign, and this one is subtle, is that they treat you better in theory than in practice. They say things that indicate you matter. They reference the future in ways that suggest you're in it. But the day-to-day behavior doesn't match the words. There's a gap between what they imply and what they deliver. And that gap is where most of your confusion lives. The fourth sign is that their behavior makes you feel more anxious, not less. Like your attachment system is constantly activated. Like you can never quite exhale. Like there's always something slightly uncertain about where you stand, no matter how many reassuring things they've said. If any of that sounds familiar, you're in the right place. And what you're experiencing is not you misreading the situation. It's an accurate read of a situation that was designed unintentionally to keep you in a permanent state of low-grade uncertainty. And you deserve to know that that uncertainty has a name, it has a cause, and it is not a reflection of your worth. What genuine change looks like, and what doesn't. There's one more thing I want to address before we close this out. Because some of you are at the stage where you're wondering, can this change? Can they change? Is there a version of this that actually becomes what I need it to be? And my honest answer is, sometimes. But not in the way most people are hoping for. When an avoidance starts to grow, genuinely grow, not just adjust their surface behavior to keep you from leaving, it doesn't look like them suddenly becoming warm and available overnight. It doesn't look like a dramatic moment of realization, where they show up at your door and tell you they figured it out. Real change is slow and unsexy. It looks like them initiating conversations about their patterns. It looks like them naming their fear instead of acting it out. It looks like them doing something external, therapy, reading, actual reflection, that isn't prompted by the immediate threat of losing you. It looks like incremental, consistent shifts in behavior over time, not grand gestures followed by the same old distance. And crucially, real change doesn't require you to keep tolerating the same behavior while they figure it out. Real change in an avoidant, if it's genuine, involves them taking responsibility for the effect their patterns have had on you. Not just explaining those patterns, taking responsibility for them. If what you're getting is explanation without accountability, if they can talk beautifully about their attachment wounds but still leave you waiting and confused on the other side, that's insight without action. And insight without action doesn't change anything for you in any practical sense. You deserve more than someone who understands their own damage. You deserve someone who is actively working to not pass that damage on to you. What this stage is telling you about you, I want to flip this around before we close. Because we've spent a lot of time talking about them, and there's something I want you to see about yourself in all of this. The fact that you got here, the fact that you got close enough to an avoidant for them to quietly decide you matter, tells you something. It tells you that you have something genuinely magnetic about you. That you are the kind of presence that breaks through walls. That when you love in a way that reaches people who are not easy to reach. That is not a small thing. Most people bounce off avoidance before it ever gets to this stage. You didn't. And the fact that they felt something real enough to get scared, that's a testimony to who you are, not a condemnation. The pain of this stage is real. The confusion is real. The exhaustion of trying to read someone who won't let you in is real. But don't let that pain make you believe there is something wrong with the way you love. There isn't. The way you love is exactly right. It just found someone who doesn't yet know how to meet it. And that is a them problem masquerading as a you problem. Don't let it take root as a story about your worth. You are someone worth reaching through the fear for. The only question is whether they're going to do it. And whatever they decide, you're going to be okay. More than okay. That's what the healing room is for. One more thing before you go. I want to leave you with this. And I want you to carry it with you. Whatever happens with this person, whatever they decide, whatever they're capable of, whatever stage they're at with their own fear and their own growth, your job right now is not to manage their feelings. Your job is not to be patient enough, understanding enough, available enough that they finally feel safe. Your job is not to love them into healing. Your job is to be honest about what you're experiencing, to name what you need, to hold the line on what's actually working for you and what isn't. To keep showing up for your own life with the same energy and intention you've been pouring into decoding theirs. Because here's the thing. You came to this space, whether for the first time or the 100th, because something in your life needed to be looked at honestly. And I think you already know, somewhere underneath all the analysis, what the honest view looks like. Trust that knowing. It's been there the whole time. There's a version of this story where you wait, where you hold on, where you give it time and space and grace and hope that eventually the fear subsides enough for them to reach across the distance. And for some people, that patience pays off. For some people, the avoidant does the work, and things do change, and the connection that was always real finally gets to breathe. But there's another version, and I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't name it. There's a version where you wait for a long time and nothing fundamentally shifts. Where the warmth keeps coming in flashes and the distance keeps coming in waves, and years pass and you realize you've spent them in a holding pattern that was never quite relationship and never quite not relationship. Orbiting, hoping, adjusting, and slowly forgetting what it felt like to be somewhere you didn't have to earn your way in. That version doesn't have a villain. The avoidant in that story isn't cruel. They probably do care. They probably do have that quiet decision sitting somewhere inside them. But caring isn't enough on its own. Deciding someone matters isn't enough on its own. What matters, what actually matters in the day-to-day reality of a shared life, is whether someone can show up, consistently, in a way that you can actually feel. And you are allowed to need to be able to feel it. The avoidant's quiet decision about you is their business. Your quiet decision about yourself, about what you need, about what you're worth, about what kind of love you're willing to accept, that's yours to make. And I hope you make it in your own favor. Keep coming back here. We're going to keep talking about this. Keep working through it. Keep getting to the real stuff underneath the confusion. Because the real stuff is this: you are not someone who needs to be fixed, decoded, or made less so that a guarded person can handle you. You are someone who deserves to be met, fully, openly, by someone whose love shows up in a way that reaches you, not just in their private thoughts, not just in those glimpses of warmth before the walls go back up, but in the consistent, daily, unremarkable reality of being with you. That's not asking for too much. That is the baseline, and don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise. You're not alone in this, and you're more clear-eyed than you think you are. The healing room is right here.